And in that time, we have collected about 130 million, it's actually about 140 million as I speak today, across about 25,000 domains. And that's actually using quite a small number of plugins. There's probably a couple hundred plugins out there right now that are kind of reporting back to our database on a daily basis. And this kind of means there's some quite astonishing statistics. There are something like 2 cookie transactions every second going on. So the question about having your browser pop up a little warning every time a cookie wants to be set, that's how often that would be happening, which is quite scary. And then another issue is just how many cookies there are on any kind of website. bbc.co.uk has over 2,000 unique cookies. That's straight from our database. Some of those cookies are very specific to very specific pages and very specific functions. A lot of websites kind of generate cookies, and these are just unique names of the cookies. A lot of them get generated on the fly, so the more kind of content, there's almost a kind of never-ending stream of cookies going on out there. And so it's quite a big issue to think about how that's going to work. To actually kind of gain any kind of reasonable consent. So it is going to change it, but it doesn't really affect a lot of smaller companies won't have that kind of problem. Very recently, we've just opened up, for those who are interested in finding out a bit more, we've opened up a search on our website, so you can type in a domain name and you'll get a list back of the cookies that we've collected for that domain. Our plan is, over time, to open this database up further, give you more information about those cookies. We want to start to kind of generate a lot of conversation about them. We want to open it up so people can comment about it. We want people to kind of start commenting, writing and giving it more information about their own cookies on their own websites. And really just kind of find out a lot more. And that, as that website grows, and we'd love people to kind of get involved in that. But on top of that, we've kind of really realised that, so we're basically kind of doing 2 things at the moment. We started talking to the Department of Culture and the ICO to kind of share our insights into what we've gained from the data we've been collecting, to kind of hopefully to kind of influence the application of the cookie law. Dan has mentioned a working group. The Department of Culture said starting up a working group in about July. We've been invited to get involved with that, and we're hoping there to be able to kind of represent the views of a wide number of people as well. But we're also kind of looking at how we can kind of build solutions for website owners to gain legal compliance as far as is possible. Because it's an untested law, you can't kind of guarantee any kind of compliance being complete. But the main issue, as I said earlier, is about being seen to be doing something at this point in the game. So we've started building what we're calling the Cookie Law Toolkit, and this really is kind of at the moment kind of one part of the solution that we see. And it'll start to look familiar in a minute, but it's a web service for obtaining consent from people who visit your website, and we're taking the option to kind of create a simple web script that people can drop into their page. We'll connect to our database, which will then draw out the information about the cookies on that website and present people with information and functionality to gain consent. This kind of toolkit will only kind of prevent, will also be able to prevent some of the cookies. Google Analytics, most third-party cookies use insertion scripts, and we're developing ways in which you can block those insertion scripts until you gain consent for them. There are also server-side generated cookies. A lot of content management systems will generate cookies. The ICO website, they talk about a session cookie that they their website places and they can't do anything about it, that's because it's being generated at some point that their content management system requires it to be used. You can't, so you know, there are additional complications, but you can get rid of a lot of the kind of cookies that the EU are worried about. Privacy cookies are script-based ones. So this is just a very brief introduction to kind of what this our toolkit will look like on a website. This is only a kind of concept at the moment. I'm going to show you a prototype in a second. So you go to a website and you get one of these little rollover bars or accordions that drop down. The aim is to kind of get people to press the allow button as much as possible. But if they press the more info button, it drops down a bit further, gives them some more information about the cookies that are available, and gives them the option to either don't allow or find out a bit more information, and hopefully kind of allow. We think there's a lot more work to be done on this. We anticipate doing a lot of trialling on the different types of messages that will be required to kind of gain the aim of it, which is for people to allow cookies.
Excuse me, is content forever, or is it for a fixed period of time?
At the moment, the way that you signify consent using it is actually by setting a cookie. Now, and the tool will actually tell you that it needs to set a cookie, because you don't want to see this pop up. Once you've done it, it should disappear. But cookies have to have an expiry date, so there's a kind of built-in timeline within the technology that you can place the cookie. Once it's placed, it has to have an expiry date, and once it's expired, you come back to the website and it's going to pop up again. What we don't know, and what we are planning to seek further guidance on, is what that timeline should be. The guidance at the moment has kind of said, well, you only need to seek it once. So we could be saying, well, we can set it for 2 years, 10 years, and that's fine, and maybe we'll be safe.
So what do you do with a website which is not .co.uk, but you have contactlenses.co.uk, contactlenses.nl, .be, .spain, whatever, and then all these different national laws? It seems that there's a difference in national laws popping up. Do you think you can tweak that kind of tool to customize the local legislation?
We think it can be possible. We've concentrated so far on the UK because the UK is what we know, and it's what kind of the most information. We think the people in the ICO and the DCMS are saying that a lot of the rest of the EU is looking towards what the UK is doing because it's leading. But there are some differences. The Dutch law recently came out, which I haven't read the original text, but the interpretations that I've seen suggest that it goes a step further, and that and there's a requirement to provide proof that you've gained consent. But because we are looking at drawing this information down from a database, we think it's possible to kind of present different solutions. Of course, one of the issues is how you identify where somebody is when they visit your site, when they land on the website, and therefore which law applies is the other issue, because there is a possible interpretation that says it's not where your website is based, but it's where your visitors are coming from. But that's a complication that I think we're going to may or may not become an issue moving forward. I'm just going to show you the prototype in action. We've just built this up this afternoon. You see, so that kind of comes down like that. And to give you an example, and this is, if I click on more info, it doesn't look very pretty at the moment, but this kind of gives you an idea of actually of some issues involved in this, because this is quite a simple website, but there are actually kind of a number of different types of cookies involved. Now, at the moment, there are no cookies being set by visiting the site, apart from this ASP.NET Session cookie, which is the same type of cookie the ICO have. We have, if I get rid of this, if I scroll down to the bottom, you'll see an empty space here where we've got a number of, there would normally be there a number of third-party scripts like Facebook Like, there's a Google Plus one, and there's a Twitter thing that would normally appear here. But if we put those on, then there's a risk that we will be loading a cookie. Those things, interestingly, will only actually load a cookie if you, the visitor, have previously used the services of one of those. So if you've logged into Facebook before and you visit our site without this, then there'll be a Facebook exchange of cookies. But if you visit the site and you've never used Facebook, you've got no Facebook cookies on your browser, then we can show the Facebook logo, and there won't be any Facebook cookies until you kind of click on it, and therefore it's kind of safe. But we don't know what your browsing history is. So at the moment, what we've done is we've said, okay, we have to kind of block those kind of social widgets, and we think that because although we're ultimately not responsible for those because they're coming from Facebook and Twitter, that we think we have to be liable because it's our website that you're looking at. If you click on allow, that just disappears in your back, and now that is now set a consent cookie, and so it won't appear again. And you can see we've now got those.
Does this law apply also to mobile sites?
Yes, and that is one of the reasons why there are issues over browser-based permissions, because mobiles use non-standard browsers.
It's not just about browsers, though, is it?
No.
Because it's actually the exchange of cookies. So if you've got an application which actually makes web calls, and the web calls embed cookies, you actually are still liable. So you could have an iPhone application where you never see a browser, but you have a liability issue.
Yes.
Yeah. And also, if you use clear GIFs for email tracking, they would be caught as well, I think.
The GIF's not actually necessarily a cookie. I mean, that's like hacking the URL like Amazon do. That's still... The law's really weird, isn't it? It's only cookies.
No,
even though there are other mechanisms for doing it.
No, actually it isn't. And it's become known as the cookie law because that's the most common mechanism. But actually it's placing a file or retrieving a file from a terminal machine.
Yeah.
So that is largely cookies, but it does account for other things like flash objects.
Would it include unique URLs for tracking purposes?
That's what I'm saying. It doesn't. Yeah.
It
doesn't.
No, it doesn't include unique URLs because you're not placing anything on a machine. The issue is placing something on the user's machine and then is storing some data and then retrieving that data from their machine. That's what the law is.
So it's data and not files, is that?
Well, it's files because the files contain the data, so it's placing the files.
But then
I mean, you could argue you're placing an empty file has no data, but why would you do it?
You can store it in HTML5 storage, for example. That's not essentially a file. That's a database row. So does that mean
it's very interesting that there hasn't been any very much comment or ruling about that, but there is some advice that has been said that there are other mechanisms for storing information, including the use of HTML5, may be under it.